Welcome back to the Agendas podcast. My name is Harry. I'm here with Ben. Ben, what's going on?
How we doing?
Doing pretty good. Some Game 7 basketball yesterday. Can't really complain. Getting into the really deep part of the playoffs, the conference finals, is where stuff really gets down. But I'm excited to talk about some things today. Put some interesting perspectives on these games that everyone's talking about. But I think we have some unique takes on what happened. Let's start with Wolves Nuggets, game 7. Last time we talked, the Nuggets were up 3-2. I didn't give up. I said, let's give the Wolves a shot. They're going back home for game 6. They ended up having a historic blowout in game 6. I mean, that was just. It kind of felt like for a while there that Denver was kind of get back in the game. You know what I'm saying? Like they had a shot to get back in the game. It was like 15-20. It's like, okay, Denver will make a run. I know I was on the phone with Ben. Ben's like, okay, wait for it. Like Denver's going to make their run, and then they kind of just blew it open in the second half. Um, and then you had Game 7 going back to Denver. Denver obviously a home court advantage and the altitude, and they had control for most of the game. It felt like I think they got the lead up to 20 points, if I'm correct, something like that. And then in the second half, the Wolves kind of made a run, and it wasn't one of those runs where it's like, oh, the Wolves just hit three threes in a row, like boom, boom, boom. The Wolves are back in the game. It didn't even feel like a run if you were watching the game. It kind of just was like a slow, okay, the Wolves got to stop. They got a bucket, got to stop, got a bucket. And like, it just kind of happened. You looked up and it's like, oh, wow, it's a 5 point game. And then the Wolves, were able to come all the way back. Anthony Edwards had that big three at the end of the third quarter to make it a 1 point game. And Anthony Edwards in the first half, I want to start with some Anthony Edwards because I know he's going to get all the praise because every time you win, everything you did was fantastic. The first half, he was horrific. He was awful. He was passive. He was missing shots. He was just horrendous. And then in the second half, it's not like he even turned it on. He had a couple big plays. He had that like game sealing three to put them up 10. And he had that big three at the end of the third quarter. And he had that steal on Jamal Murray and the layup. But like this idea, this revisionist, like, oh, Anthony Edwards didn't have a shot going, but he found a way to make it happen. Like, no, he played like garbage. It's okay to say he played like garbage. He hit a couple big shots. That's fine. That's what big players do. I'm not saying I'm giving him an F, but maybe like a C minus. I've been listening to some things where it's like, oh, Anthony Edwards, he found a way to win. That's that Kobe mentality. Like, we don't have to find a way to praise a guy for going 6 for 24, right? We can acknowledge that he had some great games, definitely in his playoffs and in the series as well, without having to twist because they won the game, so he had a good game by definition. That's not how that works. But Ben, I'm curious to see what your thoughts on this because it seems like something you would have an opinion on.
Yeah, I mean, listen, going into the playoffs, I don't really watch Anthony Edwards much, and I didn't really think much of him. Having watched him, you see this guy to me has the highest ceiling of anybody, you know, whatever non-centers in the league right now. Um, but there's definitely just a lack of consistency um, in terms of game to game. Um, Part of it is I think um, I don't think he's that experienced with being the guy and getting treated by defenses like the guy. So in terms of just getting doubled, how to stay active in the game, um, that even when he's getting soft doubled, he's quick to get rid of the ball and things like that. So that's just going to come with experience in terms of dealing with those types of things. But he is very passive for long stretches and whole games at a time in just a very strange way. Um, so I think the experience is going to help him with the double teams and things like that. But um, he's got a super high ceiling. To be honest, I hope he on both ends of the floor. Right, most of these players that are not centers are on one end of the floor on offense. He's a two-way super high ceiling, um, and so I would be excited for him to see over the next couple of years to see that really be um, the consistent play game to game. Um, but the other point, yeah, in terms of, this game, he played, 6 for 24, 25 from the field goal, 2 for 10 from 3. I mean, he played like a garbage can. Um,
Now
and they
he
still
did
won.
have
And
some big moments. I'm not going to take that away. He did have some big shots, but yeah, overall I agree with you.
yeah, no, he had some big shots. Yeah, whatever. We don't. 6 for 24 from the field goal. I mean, yeah, I'm sure he has some big shots. I mean, I watched the game. I don't remember everything. I mean, kind of my takeaway here is not Anthony Edwards specific, but there are certain teams and certain superstars that their teams have been able to win when they don't play well. Anthony Edwards this playoffs multiple times. The Mavericks this playoffs have been able to play despite Luka not playing well in many games. They've won some of those games. Really, this narrative started for me back to Steph Curry 20. What year was it? 2022 championship against the Celtics,
Yeah.
where their team was able to win games where the star didn't play well. And because they won the game, we don't really care. We give the credit to the star as though they played well every single game and they carried the franchise. When really they carried the franchise every other night, let's say, but their team won games when they didn't play well, and we just kind of brush that under the rug and just act like they carried the team every single game.
Yeah, I think it's part of an overall bigger problem where, especially with fans, it's just star driven, and it's kind of, they boil it down to like the simplest points. It's like, oh, LeBron versus Steph, LeBron won, or Steph versus KD, Steph won, or Ant versus Jokic, Ant won. It's like, we'll get to Denver in a second. I want to touch more on Minnesota, but like, just because a team and their star player won the series doesn't necessarily mean they played great every game, like Ben's saying, and it doesn't mean they're better than the star player that they just beat. Um, but yeah, it's fans boiling it down to just simplicities because for the sake of it, and obviously you have in the NBA, because it's marketed towards stars. A lot of fans are fans of a particular superstar instead of a team, and that's when you get into more of those conversations. But I want to touch a little bit more on Minnesota, especially particularly in this game. Um, Carl Anthony Towns, I thought played really well in this game. Ben, I know strongly disagrees, but I'll give Ben the floor in a second. I thought he was hitting his shots defensively. Carl Towns every game has like four stupid plays, and it's like, what are you doing? But that's just part of the Carl Anthony Towns experience. So we're okay with that over here. Me personally, at least, I'm okay with that. And then Rudy Gobert, people were saying, are they going to bench him at the end of the first half? Rudy gets blamed for everything. It's like if the team isn't playing well, oh, blame Rudy. And they were exploiting it to a certain degree, but he had that fadeaway jumper in the second half, which is kind of when I thought the game was over. Naz Reid played really well. But again, if you look at this game, you talk about this the whole playoffs. The recipe is the Timberwolves have to have a elite defense, not a good defense, an elite defense, and that's what happened in this game. Again, they won. What was the score? 93 to 83, something like that in the 90s and the 80s range. They can't score a lot of points. They're incapable. If Anthony Edwards scores 45, maybe they can get to 100. But Denver just was not able to score in the second half. I think it was like a 54 to 24 run, something crazy like that over the span of a couple quarters there. And it wasn't. It was the Minnesota defense to a certain degree. I thought they played aggressive, but it's just Denver's offense kind of stalled. But Ben, do you have any more takeaways from the Minnesota side of things?
Yeah, Carl Anthony Towns played pretty. He played pretty good in this game. Like he was hitting shots. Um, he was able to He was able to drive to the hoop at some point. So he played pretty well. I mean, overall, I just don't. I don't like. I consider him basically a role player. I don't want to like. He's a very unique skill set for his size and whatever, but I'm just not worried about him in any capacity in terms of as a star. Right, top two on the team, just absolutely not. And then third best player, like maybe. I mean, on the Timberwolves, where there's like four really good players, so he's maybe the. I don't know. To me, he doesn't move the needle much for me. Like he's a valuable player, but I don't know. To me, he's just not anything particularly special in terms of impact. Yeah, I'm sure we'll talk about looking ahead to them playing Dallas at some point. But in terms of the past series, yeah, that's what I got.
Yeah, I agree with you, especially for how much he's getting paid. Carl Anthony Towns he's just not that level of player. People were talking about like if the Timberwolves lose this game, what pieces could they potentially move? And they were talking about Carl Anthony Towns. He did play interestingly well in this series in terms of Rudy Gobert is a great rim protector, and that's why he wins his Defensive Player of the Years, and he's extremely valuable defensively. But if you put him one-on-one to Jokic, we saw this in Game 3. Jokic just puts the guy under the basket. It's not a competition. Jokic is, I don't know how many pounds heavier, but he's just much bigger, and he bullies him. And Towns, even though he's not necessarily the greatest defender in terms of switching on other people or staying active in the passing lanes or whatever it is, in terms of a bigger body, he kind of helped them defend Jokic to a certain degree that Rudy Gobert couldn't provide. So I definitely don't think they win this series without Towns. But yeah, in terms of a
True, definitely
star,
true.
a guy who's winning, a guy who's getting paid $50 million, yeah, he's definitely not quite that guy. But I want to move to the Denver side of things. Denver was up 3-2. They flipped this series. It was a very interesting series. You know, the Timberwolves go up 2-0. Oh, the Timberwolves are going to sweep. Then Denver wins three straight. And then it's like, okay, Denver has control. Then Minnesota wins the last two. But you know, going up 3-2, going back to Minnesota with all the momentum, that game six was always going to be a tough environment. It's always tough to win four straight games, but to lose in that embarrassing of a fashion, it's just unacceptable. I know you could say one game it doesn't carry over to the next game, whatever it is, but the Minnesota definitely had to have, you know, a confidence from that if Minnesota wins that game by 1 point, you know, I don't think they have quite that level of confidence. But it's kind of just like, okay, yeah, we know we struggled the past couple games, but you know we're the better team. Let's show it. And it was what it was. They lost that game, but then you have Game 7 at home, which used to be a lock pretty much. You're at home for Game 7. You're winning the Game 7. This year we had a couple Game 7s, and the road team won both of them. So we'll have to, you know, maybe that's something that's changing a little bit. But Nikola Jokic, his numbers were gaudy. I know Ben's going to get into his 3-point shooting. I thought he played well. You know, look at his numbers. It's like, wow, Jokic played an A-plus game. I don't think he played an A-plus game. Maybe like a B-plus game. I know people are like, look at the numbers. But in terms of eye test wise, he didn't really assert his dominance, for lack of a better term, in the game. It didn't feel like, okay, Jokic is kind of, you know, forcing his will on the Timberwolves and carrying him in a way that, you know, maybe you had Kevin Durant versus the Bucks back in 2021, or LeBron James versus the Warriors back in 2015, the first couple games of the finals, or in 2018, game one. That's what I kind of expected, especially if people were talking about, oh, he was standing at the end of game six, so Jokic is going to have a monster game next game. And his numbers were monster again, but it didn't feel like quite that. You know, maybe that's how high of a standard I have for Jokic. It just felt like I wanted a little bit more. The 3-point shooting was obviously off. And then for Jamal Murray, you know, he had that 24 in the first half when they were up 20. And then he finished the game with 35, which is, you know, it's fine. But again, it's kind of easier to score once your team has the momentum. You're going on runs. It's like, okay, he'll hit another two, another three here or there. Like we're up 15. There's no pressure. Once that game's kind of started to slide away from them a little bit, I would have liked to seen more from Jokic and Murray. I know Jokic scored a lot of points in the second half, but I just, you know, there's some moments where it's like, okay, we need a bucket from this guy. They just went on an 8-0 run. Let Jokic needs to score 5 quick points and put us right back up front. And that moment kind of never came. Obviously, the bench in this game. I mean, we're talking about Jokic and Murray, who combined for I think 69 points or something like that. I think it was 35 and 34, so it was 69 points, and the team scored like in the 80s. So the bench I think scored like 4 or 5 points. It was a travesty. Aaron Gordon had 4 points. So you know, the third leading scorer I think was Michael Porter Jr. with 7 points. So obviously it's the others' fault. But when you talk about a game of seven, you talk about the stars. If the Nuggets win this game, we're talking Jokic, we're talking Murray. So you know the Stars got to bring it home. But Ben, what were your takeaways from the Denver side of things?
Yeah. Yeah. In terms of Jokic, I mean, here I'll start here. I think Denver. I mean, I don't want to. I'm insinuating my own, you know, narrative into this, and I'm using, you know, I have my narrative, and then I'm fitting everything into it. So I don't know if this is actually true, but it just felt like Denver just felt they're the better team, and I agree with them, even though they lost the series. It just felt like they thought they were the better team, and so they just didn't really take Minnesota seriously. And like certain games, a couple games specifically, game two, game six, they're like, yeah, we'll just take this game off almost. Game two, I'm not sure because you can't lose both at home, but it just feels like they're like, yeah, we'll take this game off, and we'll get a next game because we can just get them whenever we want. And then in game seven, up by 20, you know, it didn't feel, I don't know, I don't think they got lax in game seven, but it didn't feel like they were hungry, like they were doing. I don't know, but back to Jokic specifically. Um, yeah, I mean they were daring him from there to take these 3-point shots the whole games, particularly in the first half. He LeClanked all of them. He had a couple later in the game, so I mean, It is what it is. It looks like, I'm just looking this up now, he's about a 30%, 33% career three-point shooter. So not as bad as I thought, but whatever. Not great shots to be taking. Particularly in the first half, I thought he was extremely passive. Now, that was when they were winning by 20, so it's hard to blame him for that. Um, but then when, late in the game, when it was a close game and Minnesota started to pull the lead, I thought he waited too long to go into, I'm Jokic, I'm going to try to score every possession. He went into that mode super late, and it was kind of too little too late. Also, he didn't have a ton of success doing it. He got blocked. So maybe he wasn't super aggressive because he didn't think he would beat them doing that. And maybe that's what Denver thought with the big bodies Minnesota has. They didn't think that was really going to work, and it didn't really work. But I don't know. I wanted to see him be more aggressive, and even if that doesn't mean going all the way and scoring, getting down low. It felt like he would catch it at the block and kind of just chill there. He wouldn't even start to drive. I don't know. Yeah, when they were up 20, I thought I was getting. I had Golden State vibes from this team, not the prime Golden State. Now, I didn't think they were prime Golden State, but as compared to the league, I think there were better, higher end teams back then. As compared to the competition, I felt Denver had a certain amount of inevitability to them, and in certain ways they did, and in certain ways, but obviously they didn't because they didn't get it done. It felt like just overall they just didn't take it as serious as they needed to prove it in the real world that they are actually the best.
Yeah, I saw a quote from Christian Brown after the game, and he was like, "It sucks because I think we were the better team," which kind of, to Ben's point, is kind of that was their belief in the locker room, and you should believe you're the better team. I don't fully agree that they let off the gas in games. I think in certain moments though, especially particularly Game 7, they kind of relied on oh, well, we always out execute them down the stretch. Like me and Ben were watching the game together, and with 3 minutes left, they were down 7, something like that. And Ben's like, oh yeah, they're just gonna out execute them down the stretch and win this game. And I think Denver kind of relied on that too. It's like, oh yeah, we're just gonna out execute them in the fourth quarter and win the game. And Minnesota's too good for that. Do I think Minnesota was the better team? I don't. I know it's not a popular thing to say after the team loses, but that wasn't my major takeaway. Again, do I think Anthony Edwards is better than Nikola Jokic? No, I do not. Okay. But that's how the series plays out. Sometimes you know a scrappy team, an underdog team can kind of fight and use that momentum to push over the series, and it just proves the point of how important game 1 and 2 are. You know, after game 1 and 2, it was a relatively close series. Denver maybe had the edge, but you can't give up your first 2 games at home and expect to win the series. It's just too tough a position to put yourself in. And in terms of Jokic, in terms of the all-time stuff, he's kind of in that position that Giannis was in after his title, where it was like, this is going to be the Giannis era. He's winning the MVPs, he's winning the awards, and he won a title. He's going to win all the titles, and that's not how the NBA works usually. This is going to be the 6th different champion in the last 6 years. No repeat for Jokic. And I think he'll get back there. I would be shocked if Jokic never played it in another NBA Finals. But it's just not that easy. And sometimes people project championships too soon. Like it's the second round. Even Anthony Edwards, it's like, oh, now the Timberwolves won the championship. It's like, no, they didn't. Now they play another round and then they have to beat another team. So it just championships are hard. And, in terms of what Denver needs to do in the offseason, I'm not sure. People have talked about moving Michael Porter Jr. It depends what they could get for him. But their team kind of is what it is. And I think they just have to execute better next year. And we'll see, sometimes teams after a disappointing loss can kind of fall apart. We saw that with the Phoenix Suns kind of after they got wrecked by Luka, it kind of went downhill from there. But we'll see if Denver can bounce back next year because I think it's arguable that they lost to the second best team in the NBA, but we'll have to see how things play out.
Yeah, the second best team behind them.
I hear that. All right, let's move on to Dallas and OKC, particularly Game 6. I thought Shea was the best player in Game 6. I thought he was fantastic, especially that 3 at the end of the game to kind of keep them in it, which was if he missed that shot, the game is over, and he just drills it, no problem, step back. And then he made that massive mistake of fouling the corner three-point shooter in P.J. Washington. P.J. Washington had been massive all series, and he kind of wasn't that great this series, but he had some big plays at the end of that game to kind of help them clinch. From the Dallas side of things, Luka was okay. I didn't really notice him too much. Honestly, that was my main takeaway. In terms of the numbers, Luka always puts up numbers because he has the ball a lot. But I was like, I don't even remember Luka playing, to be honest. Kyrie didn't have a big game. I thought Derek Lively was very good, active on the boards, and with some big free throws. PJ Washington has moments at the end. But it was kind of a, you know, an all-out performance from Dallas in terms of multiple people contributing, which you can't say for the OKC side. But Ben, in terms of the Dallas side of things, what were your takeaways from Game 6 or even the series in general?
Yeah, I mean, my biggest takeaway here, and maybe we could do this as another segment, another day, but just having a review of my playoff takes and just seeing what I got right, what I got wrong.
Where Colin
Um,
was right.
yeah, I mean, not even for that, just to kind of review it and have it in my brain, kind of, how to look at things, and so maybe I can do better next year. Um, but I think in the beginning of the series, I had it right, where I thought that the Dallas Stars were a bit better than the OKC Stars, plus the experience edge. They were going to out execute late in games. Um, After OKC was able to out execute Dallas, I switched that and I came off that. I don't think I thought that the OKC Stars were better, but I came off that I thought Dallas had the late game edge and the experience edge. I discounted that because of what OKC was able to do in that game, and I think that was an overreaction. Dallas in the next two games completely out executed OKC late in the game. Yeah, Shea had that foul. I mean, that's part of being inexperienced, but also that play was super late in the game. Like, even if it's not a foul and he misses the shot, well, I mean, they would have to rush down the court. I know they did have a timeout because if they didn't blow it on
No,
the
if he misses
challenge.
that shot, I think they're down two with a chance to tie or take the lead. I believe so.
Yeah, yeah. No, but yeah, it's one shot, not a full shot. I mean, yeah, they could have tied and took the lead. So to go to game seven, that was
They
it
might
was
have
like
even been up at that point because they ended up losing by one, and he had two of three free throws. I don't know exactly. We'll have to look back in the situation.
right, right, and that was but also that was at the flurry of an end of like kind of a. It didn't feel like a desperate comeback type of thing where like they checked like some shots went in and quick and it was going. Like it didn't feel like an execution comeback in those last. It felt like it was a quick like NBA. This sometimes happens where the game gets super close in the last like 30 seconds because I don't know. I'm making stuff up, but I think that was an overreaction to me in terms of um, Dallas did have the experience edge, and to me, I thought it showed. Um, and yeah, I'm looking forward to talking about the next round with Dallas as well.
Yeah, I have to see if we get to it on this podcast or potentially, maybe record one on Wednesday. We'll have to see. But yeah, quick question, Ben. The next 3 years, Shea or Luca, who are you taking?
That's an interesting question because I think the Mavs are going to win the championship this year, so it's hard to not say Luca. But in a vacuum, I would say Shea.
Yeah, and I don't think that's crazy to say. I posted this on Twitter, this question. But I think going into the playoffs, especially from my perception, it was kind of like Luka's at tier one and Shea's kind of a tier down. Watching this series, I know people are going to say injuries, whatever. Again, we talked about this before. I don't care. If you're playing, you're playing. It's not like his knee's falling off. When he has a good game, nobody cares. When he has a bad game, his knee's hurting. Okay, it is what it is. I was very impressed with Shea, particularly in this game 6. Now, the only thing with Shea is we talked about this before is he doesn't really have that ceiling. I would love to see Shea have that like killer mode. So I would like to see 10% of Anthony Edwards in Shea, where he kind of just like, okay, I'm shooting 30 times this game, and none of my teammates have it going, and I'm just willing our team to win. And instead, he's kind of just like that consistent 30, 30, 30, 30. Kind of reminds me of Kevin Durant, where it's like he rarely goes off for like 50 just because he's not the type of player to shoot that many times, but he'll just give you 30 every game. And in a game like this, especially, a game 6, you're leaving it all out on the floor. If you lose, you go home. He did take, I think, 25 plus shots, but my main takeaway from the OKC side of things, outside of Shea and how impressed I was with Shea and how, I think he's right neck and neck with Luka, is Jalen Williams was such a disappointment. I think people propped him up a little bit too early. People always want to be, the first ones to say like, oh, this guy's a superstar. This guy's the next Kawhi, whatever it was. You heard all these types of things. And it's like he's a nice player. He's not even an all-star player. And like this idea that he was going to average 20 plus points in the playoffs, and take that second star role, it was never going to happen. He was a
Did
little
he
too.
do anything? Like
I don't
Like,
remember. Honestly, I don't remember him playing at all. He
legitimately.
Yeah, I mean, but again, it's like, what is he, a second or third year player? I don't shoot me on that. I have to look at exactly what year it is. But he looked like a player in one of his first playoff series, and he was timid and he was scared, and that's normal. But like people had this expectation that he wasn't going to be like that. Um, and he's not the second guy in the champion at this moment, at least. I think
22
maybe
points, 12 points, 14 points, 16 points, 20 points, 18 points. I mean, yeah, he got outplayed by PJ Washington significantly.
Yeah, and you could say that's the series right there. A lot of these games are close. I think they actually tied in points at the end of the series. But OKC going forward, I think if they get a second star, maybe a Lauri Markkanen type player, I know I've mentioned him a couple times, then you move all of a sudden Jalen Williams is your third guy, and that's a championship level team. But I don't think they had enough talent, and I kind of feel bad for Shea because just he played really well in this series, and kind of no one came along with him. And what I really hope is, I've talked about this before, Sam Presti, be aggressive for once, okay? We get it. You're obsessed with draft picks. You go home, you count your draft picks, right? You probably don't even care that you lost because they're all about the future, the future, the future, the future. This team has the pieces where if you add a star player, this is a legitimate championship contender. This year, I don't think they were a legitimate championship contender at the end of the day with how things played out. And they just weren't talented enough. Period. They were not a great regular season team. A team would play with great energy and everything like that. But come playoffs, it slows down, and you need a bucket getter. They could use a Paul George right now. I know. Obviously they used to have Paul George. That's probably not going to happen. But they need that second player. And Sam Presti, please, trade 3 or 4 first round picks and go get a star player.
I
It's
think,
go ahead, go ahead.
I think, I mean, listen, you can always go get the star player. They have 13 picks. They could probably get anybody they want in the league outside of, a couple people if they wanted to. I think if outside of doing that extreme thing, like I've seen this around the league a little bit. I might just be scarred as a Hawks fan, but like for example, as the Magic, like I don't mind if they wait another year. Like let Jalen Williams go another year and Chet go another. Like these guys could, they're still developing. Like I don't mind giving them another year and playing it slow. Um, but in terms of, so if you're not going to go the star route, I think they need a center, like a real big defensive center.
A Clint Capella.
I think. No, I'm not. That wasn't the point of this. I'm just saying, like the Hawks. No, there's no to the Hawks. I just think they had trouble stopping the guards at times, and I think a real center. Not that Chet's not great, but I think for certain minutes and
He's not a
potentially even to play
center.
them.
He's not a center.
Who plays five? He plays the
I mean, he
center for
might
them,
play the
right?
five. He's not a center. He gets bullied. He ain't no center.
All right, and well, I mean, whatever. This is the issue with Alex Sars. He can't shoot, but Chet can shoot, so you can play Chet at the four. Um, I would like to see them add a center to this team. I think that could be really interesting.
Yeah, I agree with you. It'll be interesting. Kind of a Carl Anthony Towns might be an interesting fit, but it's not going to happen just because the Timberwolves are where they are. It's kind of
It
interesting to
doesn't
find a
need to be. It
name.
doesn't need to be. This is what I'm saying. It doesn't even need to be a star player. You can get a defensive center that's just like a veteran who's been around the league. I'm not saying it has to be cheap, but you can get a $20 million guy. You
Throw
don't
out
have
a
to give
name.
up a ton. I don't have a name off the top of my head. I mean Clint Capella, but he's old, so I don't know if you want to go with that. I mean, but you're not going to play him a ton of minutes, so it's not a terrible move.
Jared Allen.
Jarrett Allen, yeah, I'm not. Yeah, I don't have a super high bar here. I really don't. I don't have the expertise to start listing off centers in the league, but I know these guys are around. These veteran center guys. I think that would be a valuable piece for them.
Yeah, I hear waiting it out, and obviously NBA fans are impatient, including myself. But I just don't want it to see where you wake up in 3 years and it's like, okay, well, their window kind of passed, and it's like, well, at least we had all these picks. It's like Shea is like 25, 26. He's not 22. You know,
No, I'm not
your
saying that it's
window is
3 years,
here.
but I'm not saying that. I think they have a year. I think they have 1 year. If they want, I mean, obviously Kevin Durant would be great on this team. They could get. That's the thing. They have 13 first-round picks. They could get almost out of two or three guys. They could get any human being on the planet to play for their team if they decide they want to do it. Yeah, that yeah, I
Anyone
don't
who's
mind if they,
anyone who's available, they can get. Let's put it like that.
I mean, we're talking about 13 picks. You don't think? I mean, outside of like I bet you could get Giannis for 13 first-round
No,
picks.
you can't.
Really?
Either he's available or he's not. I don't, I mean, the Bucks happens to be interesting just because their situation they're in, which we'll probably talk about in the offseason. But yeah, I'm interested to see you mentioned like, oh, let's do a review of our takes in the playoffs. Let's do that after the finals. We'll go through it and see what our predictions were from the beginning. I don't know if we made predictions all the way through. Maybe next year we'll have to do that, but we'll go through and hold ourselves accountable, unlike some other shows. But do you have anything to add before we move on to Knicks Pacers?
No. But also,
All
I
right,
don't have anything to add on Knicks Pacers either. But we go.
oh, let's do Knicks Pacers a little bit. Let's talk about it a little bit. Um, another series. The Knicks are up 3-2, going to Game 6 in Indiana. I thought Indiana was winning that game. Indiana's home court is pretty ridiculous, underrated. It's kind of like a college basketball type of vibe. Um, and Tyrese Halliburton played better the past couple of games, but Indiana wins Game 6. Okay, fine. Going back to Game 7. Again, Game 7, the home team is it's pretty much 100%. Not all 100%, but it's definitely up there. And it was such a disappointing performance. And it was kind of the opposite of the Timberwolves game. I don't say the opposite, but like the Timberwolves were down 20 on the road in Game 7 and came back and won. That was like a shocker. This was like Indiana just came in and took their lunch money, as the great Chris Broussard says. They put their feet on the table and they made themselves a sandwich. And that was kind of the way that Indiana was going to have to win this game, is just come out and play fast and just run up the score. And when you're up 15, 20 points, all of a sudden the air in the arena kind of like fizzles out. And you could feel the nervousness. I was talking with Ben as you're watching these Game 7s. There's nothing like a Game 7. Even you could feel it from the tension of the fans, where it's just like a quietness. It's like they'll cheer when the guy scores, but it's like they'll go right back to being quiet because it's just such a fear and anxiety. You can just feel it in the building. And when a team like Indiana, goes up 15, 20 points, you got like, especially MSG with all like the celebrities and the fans, and the Knicks haven't done anything in 67 years, whatever it is. Not really, like 25, whatever it is. But you can feel that energy, and it kind of works against the home team almost. So that was interesting. Tyrese Halliburton definitely had some things to say to the fans, but it was kind of Trae Young vibes, a little bit. No, relax, Ben. We'll get to you in a second. But in terms of just Tyrese, especially in this Game 7, I thought Tyrese Halliburton was excellent. And in terms of just the Knicks fans just being stunned and shocked by an opposing team, I know Jalen Brunson got hurt in this game, and the Knicks are going to talk about the injuries and whatever it is, but Julius Randle being injured is a positive. Okay, if anyone's ever watched Julius Randle in the playoffs, he's against that Hawks. I think he shot like 20%, whatever, might even be less than that. Um, so it's like, oh, Julius Randle was hurt. Like, that's not a negative. That's literally a positive. Just because like people like, also that's the other thing people do is if like there's 5, 6 injuries, people just throw in like the sixth guy as like their 10th bench guy. But it's like, oh, he's also injured, so we'll throw him in too. It's like, no, that guy actually is not valuable at all. I mean, Anunoby being hurts some obviously, but he played again. If you're playing, I'm not, I don't give the injury excuse. Obviously, you could see if a guy's banged up a little bit, but everyone's banged up at this point. But I am a little bit disappointed, as much as I'm not upset that the Knicks lost. Just that like a Pacers Celtics Eastern Conference Finals is just an absolute joke. But Ben, I want to get your thoughts on this game. And just a quick question before I get your take on this: are the Pacers the worst conference finals team ever?
Yeah, so I'll start. I know you don't like when I say this, but I literally did not want to watch 1 second of this basketball game. So I don't have a lot of takes on this game specifically. Yeah, I've been saying this whole series we're shuffling deck chairs on the Titanic. And so I predict the over under for games in the conference finals, Celtics versus Pacers. I put at 4.5. And I would take the over because the Celtics aren't the type of team to actually sweep anybody. I just don't really have any respect for the Pacers players or their style of play. We'll see if they prove me wrong, but the Knicks are interesting. I mean, they need to make a move of some kind. Like this is kind of the ceiling of this team. Maybe in another universe or in another season they get to the conference finals and then get wrecked by an actually good team. So, and I would give them more of a chance than the Pacers against the Celtics. But I think OKC can wait a year. I don't know the Knicks timelines, but I think the Knicks need to make a move to get to a championship. Like they don't have a lot of growth players left on their team. I think OKC is developing players, right? Jalen Williams and Chet are going to get better in the next season or two. Where I don't think I think the Knicks players are what they are, so I think they need to make a move. I guess the other thing I'll touch on is the Pascal Siakam trade. It might just be the offense that the Pacers run, but it doesn't feel like any one player. I mean, Halliburton, but it doesn't feel like outside of that, it doesn't feel like any one player specifically makes that big a difference when you run that type of offense. Pascal Siakam was a 3 first-round pick trade, and this year he's about to get an extension, 5 for $245, $50 million a year for a 30-something-year-old Pascal Siakam. I wish the Pacers good luck moving forward.
Ben, I have a question of the day. Who would you rather pay, Pascal Siakam or Trevor Lawrence? That's a good one.
I mean, that's a super weird one. I don't think Trevor Lawrence is going to get the contract people think he's going to get.
I saw a rumor today that they're looking at a $50 million contract, but we'll get that in a different episode. But just out of curiosity, something
I get it with Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott can show the numbers. He can show some playoff success. He can show that guy can show elite play. His agent can put that down on the table to the owner and say, I can make the case that this guy's that guy. And those guys. Trevor Lawrence has absolutely nothing. I would be shocked. I would have go over 40, 45 max, like the Kirk Cousins number. I'm not going 50, 55, 60, 65 million. Absolutely not.
If he gets that contract, we're going to have a massive rant on that episode. I've never seen someone's college and high school career carry him that much. But let's get back to some basketball. And your Pascal Siakam point. You want to finish that up over there?
Yeah, I mean, this feels like the Hawks with DeJounte. They 3 first-round picks, and you're about to. At least DeJounte's getting paid $25 million a year, which I think gets under-discussed. I feel like that makes him more valuable, and it doesn't really get talked about in terms of his trade value. $50 million for Pascal Siakam. I'm pretty sure he's 32 years old. I don't really have any more to say. I've said what I think and what the situation is. I just think that's out of control. And they're just we need a star. Oh, this guy's available. That's it.
Yeah, I think they kind of committed to paying him probably under the table when they traded for him. But even if not,
he's 30.
First of all, it's worked. It's okay. It's worked out better than they could imagine being in the conference finals. But I definitely hear you.
They had the weakest path. Who they playing?
Yeah. The first round was Milwaukee without Giannis and Dame.
Yeah, I mean, any other path that any other team had in this playoffs, they would be out in the first round.
Yeah, I think they would have lost to Orlando in the first round, if I'm being honest. But maybe not.
Maybe not.
That'd be a close series. We'll see. But yeah, they're kind of in a tough spot because they're a small market team, and it's they're never going to have a top pick. So it's okay, you have Tyrese Halliburton, you have some other Benedict Mathurin and Nembhard and some Miles Turner, some nice pieces, but it's you're kind of stuck. Does that mean I would pay Siakam? No. I don't know what your choices are though. After you give up 3 first-round picks.
Yeah. They made the mistake already. You're not going to not pay Siakam. You're paying him. But I'm saying you knew this at the time.
You're the Pacers GM today. You already made the trade. What are you doing? You letting him go in free agency, or you signing him? Forget the sunk cost, right? What are you doing?
Probably sign him. I'm not a cap expert. I assume you can keep more salary for players you already have than you can just spend in free agency. If they don't sign Siakam, I don't think they can just spend $50 million in free agency. So that's part of the equation there. But yeah, I mean, at this point, you sign him. It is what it is.
Yeah, I would try to get him from under the max if possible. And also, if it was a 3-year deal, so you have him for the next 2 years, and then once he's on the 3rd year, he's an expiring contract, so you can get rid of him.
I think it's
that
5.
I'll be okay with. If they give him a 4 or 5-year contract, the Pacers GM should be arrested and
what
put
are they going to
bars.
do? What are they going to do? Let him go? No, I'm not signing that. I want 5 for $245.
Another team is giving him 5 years. We're going to give you 3 years, $120 million. Take it or leave it.
This
Who's beating that contract? Which team is the Pascal Siakam desperate team? Name the team. The Pistons or something?
He can at least shop around. This guy's an unrestricted free agent right now.
That's what I'm doing if I'm the Pacers. Here's 3 years, $120 million. Shop around. Go for it. If someone wants to pay you 5 years, $200 million, I'm out.
Is he unrestricted?
I'm sorry. I'm not ruining my free agency. I'm not ruining my team because I gave up first round picks. I gave up the first round picks. We made a conference finals. It was nice. We made some money. But yeah,
Give me
I wouldn't do that. I didn't think we'd spend this much time on Pascal Siakam, but I guess it might be the most interesting part of the series.
unrestricted free agent in the 2024 offseason.
Just to throw out one more thing, Ben, what do you think? I saw this today. That the Knicks. What about the Knicks and Paul George? That's an interesting one.
Yeah, I think that's a solid fit. Paul George, I don't want to have to rely on and stretch out. Not that you see elite playmaking from him in clutch moments, particularly as a shooter, more as a driver. From what I test just from watching this playoffs, so I think Brunson can take that load and he can add that edge. I don't think every team we've mentioned for him is he's really going to help them that as much as they think. I think the Knicks is actually a particularly good fit.
And the Knicks have the pieces to make another move, so I don't think this is the end of their run. They should put their pieces together and get that star player.
Paul
Not
George has a
named
player
Donovan
option.
Mitchell.
He'd play option. He could be UFA if he wants, or they could do a sign and trade
Yeah.
if they have to, whatever. But that's not that
No,
much that they have to give up in a sign and trade.
Yeah, it could definitely happen if I don't know if he's interested in New York, but whatever it is. But yeah, the Knicks have the pieces to make a move, and they should make a move to take him to the next level. Any other thoughts on this? I think we'll do the next round in the next podcast.
When are the games? Is there?
I think game one of Celtics Pacers is Tuesday, and then game one of Dallas Minnesota is Wednesday. So we'll probably record Wednesday before that game, and then it'll come out Thursday.
Okay, I'll just jot my predictions. We can talk about it later. I had the Mavs winning the finals, so they're going to beat the Timberwolves. Timberwolves are going to get some games. That's going to be a 6 or 7 game series, but the Mavs are going to win the series. Boston's obviously going to win against the Pacers, and then whatever, we're getting rounds ahead, but I will be taking Dallas over Boston as well.
Yeah, I'll drop my predictions real quick too, I guess. Just because I don't think we're going to record this before Game 7 or before Game 1s. I'll take Minnesota over Dallas in 6, and then I'll take Celtics over Pacers in 5. The Celtics they just don't sweep teams. There's always a shooting aberration game or whatever it is. Maybe the Pacers make it interesting. We'll see. And then Minnesota Celtics. That's a tough one. I'll take Boston in that series. Give me Boston in that series. Everyone's down on Boston.
I would take Boston over Minnesota too. But I won't take them over Dallas.
All right. Well, that's the predictions for the Final Four. That'll do it for this podcast. On Wednesday, or it'll come out on Thursday, we'll delve deeper into the next round of this of the conference finals games. Talk some Mavs, Timberwolves, which I think could be a really good series, and then Celtics, Pacers, which is kind of a blah series, but we got to talk about it. There's only 2 series left. And yeah, catch you on the next one. If you haven't followed us on social media, at The Agendas Pod, for those of us still listening. And yeah, we'll catch you guys on the next one. Have a good one.
Bye.